Hello and welcome to the special edition of Chat Room, bringing to you by China Global Television Network. I'm Yang Jiao, the CGTN reporter. It's now 4 p.m. in Beijing, and it's also 10 o'clock in the morning in Ukraine. A major military conflict is unfolding in the heart of Eurasian continent. It's been 9 days since Russia has taken out their special military operation in the neighboring Ukraine. And what is the political and what is the historical reasons behind this conflict? And most important, is there any peaceful resolution ahead? So we'll be talking about this today. So as you can see in today's chat room, I'll be joined by Ken Huang, CGTN commentator, Shen Shiwei, political analyst, and Qiao Liang, specialist in international and Chinese politics. Also joining us today in the chat room are our reporters and stringers in Ukraine, Russia, and around the rest of the world who will bring us the latest progress of this conflict and analysis. So gentlemen, let's start with the latest situation. Earlier this morning, a fierce firefights broke out at the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant in southern Ukraine, which is also the largest nuclear plant in Europe. And Ukrainian officials said this power plant is now secured and shut down and was controlled by Russian troops. All sides, including the IAEA, are closely monitoring this situation. So, Ken, how much do you know about this nuclear plant or any history of the nuclear plant in Ukraine?
This
nuclear power plant is actually the largest existing power plant in Ukraine, generating over 50% of the power supplying across Ukraine, occupying 1/5 of the total energies in the energy sectors of Ukraine, and it is of significant military meanings. Recently, it has been reported by the Ukrainian government as well as the Russian government that there was a fire accident occurred in this nuclear power plant, which was occurred in a normal operating office building, which is not a very important building. So at that time, there is no danger for the nuclear leakage.
As far as we know, there are 4 nuclear plants in Ukraine with 15 operating reactors. Zaporizhzhia has 6 of them. So I want to ask you this question: what an attack on a nuclear power plant could mean for Ukraine? I don't want to scare people. I mean, the conflict is scary enough, but if you think about it as a disaster, nuclear disaster, it's going to be a very, very bad situation.
Even in the midst of a military conflict, of course, nuclear safety is always the biggest concern. We don't want this to be out of control. So it's definitely good news, and I think it's very positive to know that the fire has been put out.
Yes, and for all the parties in this conflict and for the IAEA, they're all working together to have this kind of monitoring system to have the nuclear power plants under safety and not in the hands of like the extremists or any other nationalists to control this kind of very dangerous parts in this conflict. So safety is the top priority for all parties. Yeah.
Yes.
Let me add up some of the information. This nuclear power plant was designed in the USSR period. According to the design requirement, it's very cool. It's made by the stainless steel and the concrete. Even if there are some of the military conflict, the security guarantee is of high standards. Even if under the direct bombardment, there is not going to be any nuclear leakage.
Otherwise, it's going to be disaster.
And also, people were thinking about the Chernobyl
nuclear
plants,
of
right?
Course,
Which resulted in a nuclear disaster. Well, one of the biggest nuclear disasters in human history. But earlier, that we have heard that from the other media coverage that the Russian troops have taken this site. So why Russian troops will take that?
It is easy to understand. A nuclear power plant during the military conflict is one of the major military targets. Control of the nuclear power plant means controlling 1/5 of the power generated in Ukraine, creating a heavy damage to the industrial complex in this country. During the normal military conflict, equipment, including the power plant and military airport, can be used as infrastructure, which is going to be the top attack priorities.
We can take an example of NATO's bombardment in former Yugoslavia. The power plants, even it's not a nuclear power plant, they're also the strategic targets for all these missiles. So power plants is pretty crucial during the conflicts.
Yeah, if there's any accident happen to a nuclear power plant, we definitely not only economically or safety issues would have also some very negative social impact as well.
Yeah, and also political issue.
Of course, yes.
对，所以我觉得，围绕这个扎波罗热核电站
Yes.
产生的一些
There are
炒作
some of the
这个
news
一些
flying
新的
over for the nuclear power plant, but it is not necessary.
It's also information warfare.
Or yes, of course, and a major update for the day. Yeah.
And also there's some, I mean, the conflict is still ongoing, but there are some, well, I can say it's the good news coming out this because the second round of the peace talk has just concluded, and Ukraine and Russia has agreed a temporary ceasefire. So now it's a ceasefire, right?
I think it's more about they agree on the humanitarian corridor issues.
That's right.
It's already expected because during the conflict, especially now we have a lot of refugees. No one wants to lose any points on these humanitarian issues because that will be, if they cannot handle this quite well, they will be blamed by the international media and they will become, it's not good also morally. So both sides can agree on this humanitarian corridor, but for other conditions, there are still huge gaps. You see from Moscow, they still want a neutral Ukraine and no military and also demilitarization and also to recognize for Kiev, they have their demand for the territorial integrity and sovereignty, and also to withdraw all troops, Russian troops, from its territory, including the Crimea. But that is not acceptable for Moscow. But fortunately, we see both sides have the intentions to continue the dialogue. So let's see when will the third round of talks happen. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, what's your take on the first two rounds of peace talk, guys?
实际是这样，这个
Actually,
我个人感觉呢，这个谈判呢，它会持续很多轮。
I think this
那么在
negotiation
首
is
先
going
呢这个
to
头两轮谈判呢
continue for several rounds, and there is not any
成果呢
actual achievement during the first two rounds, especially in terms of the principles.
这个也是很
This
正常的
is
但是我
quite
认为呢
normal.
截止目前为止
So
双方
far,
能够就开
it
始到
is
底走
very important achievement for the two parties to agree on a humanitarian channels. Although the two parties has its own evaluations toward the negotiations,
Two explanations.
对对，但是另一
but the
方
other
面
party
还
would think that there is no
总而
actual
言之呢
progress
这个谈判呢
to put it and sum
向
it
着这个
up.
这个对
The
话
negotiation is moving toward a dialogue and diplomatic solutions to address that.
I think the hard
Sorry,
time
Xiao Liang, sorry. I've been told that we're in connection with our CGTN stringer, Yan User. Can you hear me? User. User, can you hear me? This is Yang Zhao from Beijing. Yeah, User is supposed to talk to us from the downtown Kiev. So it's the capital of Ukraine, which is one of the targets of
对
this attacks
Yes.
on the battlefields, and there are some other cities that's been under attack. When we waiting for Worcester, Ken, will you just
Give us more
introduce
about
us? Yeah,
Kiev.
Yeah.
Tell us about several cities that has been under attack.
对，这个我觉得现在可能有一些技术故障，是吧？这个看来这个
Let's
乌克兰
wait
方面的
for
信号可能
our
不是太稳定嘛。
distinguished
因为我们理
guest
解
from
现在这个
Kiev because it is
Yeah, do you have any friends who's now in Kiev?
No, I don't have
没有
any
任
friend
何
who
的
is
这个
stationed in
但
Kiev.
是我们有一些
But
报道
we
员
do have some of the
在
reporters
在
who
基
is
辅
stationed in Kiev.
目前的基辅情况
The
呢
situation in Kiev
现在呢是基本上被俄军呢形成
is what we called a encirclement by the Russian troops. And there's not so what we call the large-scale attacks has not started yet, but we have concluded all the military operations from the Russian army side. There are other different reports from the Western media, naming that there is a 50 kilometers long of the military operations, and finally it is not proven that it is as long as the Western media reports. So why there is not a very large scale operation?
Wusar, can you hear me? Hello, Wusar. Hello?
Yes, I can hear you.
Oh, Wusar, I can hear you. Can you guys hear Wusar?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Yes.
Hi, Wusar. It's very nice to talk to you. This is the chat room. Thank you so much for being with us today. And can you just tell us how is the Kiev like right now?
Right now, we are under fire. There has been some fire going on past half an hour. Air raid sirens, and
Now it's connected. We've been through this technical problems.
It's gone. Just seeking shelter, and we are under fire as we speak.
Okay.
There was a boom right now.
Bombardment. Oh.
Okay, Wusar, can you introduce it to us about how's the lives going on for the common people in Kiev?
I'm so sorry.
Have you access to food and water and other supplies?
Electricity.
Yes, I have. Yes, we do. It's just it's hard to get them. It's not that they are not accessible. It's hard to get them. You have to.
The connection is not that good. Yeah.
看来信号还是不太稳定。
So the food, everything is there, but it's hard to reach it. It takes a couple of hours to queue in a line for a shop, and then in the shop inside,
Queuing in the line.
Well, earlier Wusar mentioned that
it is hard to get anything decent.
Hard to get what?
Medicine?
It's hard to get. It's hard to get supplies because
he said it's hard to get
supplies
to the stores. Many stores are closed right now. Many stores are closed. Only few are open, and basic things like water is available, but.
So this is why a humanitarian corridor would be just in time.
Yeah.
And that's and the gas stations have queues that can take 1 hour, and they don't have the fuel you are looking for.
Yeah.
For example, we are looking for LPG.
All right. Yeah. So for all the supplies.
Since I'm sorry, the signal is really bad right now.
Yeah, I can hear it.
We can understand, yeah.
Earlier you mentioned that there are still sirens ringing, and people now won't travel between checkpoints without a vehicle. So does that mean the things is escalating right now?
Yes,
in Kiev?
I can hear them.
Does that mean
this is true?
The situation is getting worse?
Yes, it's you can feel it, especially during the night, because the night is the.
Oh, this connection is pretty weak right now.
Yeah.
A new kind of explosion that you didn't hear tonight is not escalating, but during the night you can really feel like the bombing and of targets and the rocket attacks on Kiev are escalating. Every night is worse than the night before.
Yeah. It's worsened. The situation is
before. Like sometimes
it's worsened.
And sometimes it's the morning, sometimes it's the noon, but the night is the ones that when they fire the most. They start around 10 p.m. and they go 11 midnight, sometimes every hour.
Yeah, the bombardment during
we can
the
still
night.
grab some.
Sleep. Not near, but and I apologize for the signal. It just
Okay, we understand.
Okay,
Yeah.
well, sir, thank you so
understandable.
much for being with us. I know the connection is pretty weak right now, so keep safe, and we hope we can talk to you soon. Okay.
Yeah.
Bye for now. Well, we can grab some information from SSA bombardment. And say the situation is getting worse in Kiev.
Yeah, especially the bombardment during the night, and it's kind of a military strategy used for previous conflicts. It's just let people feel tired and to destroy their resistance.
So
It's more like that, yeah.
Is Kiev a major target of Russia's special military operation?
But kind of like we discussed this morning.
네.
So you said Kiev is not actually the real target of this military
对，
campaign,
我
right?
认为可能并不
I
像
think
外
it
界
is not
推测的
as
那样，
speculated
基辅是一
as
个主
the
要
Western
的
media.
攻占目
Kiev
标
is
这
not
个
the
战略目
major
标。
military
当然
target during this
从理论
time's
讲
military
这个俄
operations.
军呢
From the
这个
theories,
肯定是要
the
占领
Russian
这
troops
个
used
乌克兰
to
的大城市，
occupy
包括
or
基辅啊，包
besiege
括哈尔
some
科夫啊，
of the
包括
Ukrainian
敖德萨，
cities,
是吧？
including
这
the
个包括
Kiev
像
and
南部地区的
Kharkiv
扎
and
波罗
also
热等等
Zaporozhye
这些
to
城
the
市
south of Ukraine
或者像这个赫尔
and
松
also
等等。
cities
但是目前来
including
看呢，俄军
Kherson.
并没有急于对
But from the current situations, the Russian troops is not put occupying Kiev as its top priorities. It must be related to its background considerations. The Russian troops or Russian units is actually focusing on to distinguish some of the Ukrainian armies or troops. It has once again explained that why around Kiev there is not a very severe bombardment. To another side, it is very closely related to the conservative manners of Russian troops.
Are not targeting Ukrainian civilians.
对，这个是从最
Yes,
开始
from
就
its
确
very
定的
first day, the Russian troops did not attack any civilians. This is not an attack towards the civilian people. That's the reason why I have always talked about the conceived manners of the military operations. There is not a biasness attacks, and it has its only military operating method. Step by step, it has occupied one city after another, and they have not shown a very urgent manner. It is like you are eating some dinner. You eat bite by bite.
Yeah, so conquer one country's capital is too big. It also have some symbolic meaning, and they will shock the international community. So maybe that is also one reason that Russian troops didn't select Kiev as a major target. So maybe it's that. Yeah.
对，是这样的。
Yes,
这个也有这
indeed.
方面的考虑。如果因
Capital
为
is too important.
对，如果因为军事行动呢，
If the military operations is creating a very huge humanitarian disaster, it is very difficult to shoulder the consequences.
Corridor that has been agreed by the second round of peace talk. So I think it's also good news for the people inside Ukraine right now. So I was really wants to ask Usar, but our connection has been shut down. But I really wants to ask him about this the next plane. Is he and his families have any plans to evacuate from the Kiev? So do you know anything? Can they leave right now, or they have been surrounded by the troops?
Sorry，
就是他们现在现在基辅是处于什么情况？它是被封锁住了吗？整个
没有被完全封锁住，它实际上呢，这个包围圈呢还没有完全合围啊。
The Russian troops
但是
is
呢，
not
这个实
encircling
际上没有合围。
Kiev for 100%, leaving the humanitarian channels for the future.
另一方面呢，这个
For another side, the Russian troops is adopting a different methodologies. They are not willing to through heavy troops in the land attacks. The major target of Russia's military operation is to consume all the military troops in Ukraine.
In southern Ukraine.
Okay, so I've been told that our CGTN reporter Michal Bardavid is standing by with us. Hello, Michal. Michal is talking to us in Istanbul, Turkey.
Another NATO
Hi, Michal,
member.
can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Hi.
Hi, just bring us the latest situation of this conflict. What do you know about this update?
Okay, so just to give you the latest update from Russia at this point, I think one of the most important developments, if we take a look, would be from a positive development, at least from yesterday's talks between Ukrainian and Russian negotiators that took place last night. I think the most positive development there, even though they didn't make a lot of progress in terms of the fighting or stopping the fighting at this point, they did agree to establish a humanitarian corridor for the evacuation of civilians. And I think this is a significant development for the civilians stuck inside Ukraine, stuck inside the fighting at this point. So that's at least one positive note that we can begin with before we move on to the fighting that's continuing in Ukraine at this point. Now, there are attacks continuing in two specific cities that are significant right now. In the southern city of Ukraine, the city of Mariupol, which is a strategic port city, attacks are continuing there. It's believed that hundreds may have been killed in attacks in that city so far. There has been an aerial assault continuing in Ukraine's second largest city, in Kharkiv. That's another important area that fighting is continuing. It is reported that some of the strikes have been hitting residential areas in that area as well. And this comes after Russia was able to take control on Wednesday of the port town of Kherson. That area is home to about 250,000 people, and it was the first city to fall to the control of Russia at this point. Another major development that happened yesterday that caused a lot of global concern at this point as well was regarding a nuclear power plant, Zaporizhzhia, which is, of course, very important because it's Europe's largest nuclear power plant. Also, a fire broke out in that plant earlier. It's believed that it was caused by an attack. This, of course, created a lot of concern for a nuclear catastrophe. The fire has been contained, but it's now believed that Ukrainian authorities have stated that this power plant is now under the control of Russian troops. The Ukrainian station personnel are still working there, and they are monitoring the situation and the state of the power units in this power plant in Zaporizhzhia.
Yeah, can you bring us a little bit more about a perspective from the European side on this conflict? They have put the sanctions on Russia. Can you just tell us more about those sanctions?
Sure. And just to begin with the kind of perspective that Europe has at this point, I can give you a quote from the European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen. She stated that Europe stands by those in need of protection. All those fleeing Putin's bombs are welcome in Europe. We will provide protection to those seeking shelter, and we will help those looking for a safe way home. This was the European Commission President's statement when the conflict began. So that just gives us the idea of what their perspective, what the European Union stance is at this moment. They have stressed that Ukraine is a priority partner to the European Union. And when they described the conflict, they used this sentence. It was stated that it was an unprovoked and unjustified military aggression by Russia. So they have imposed several sanctions. Let me give you the most important ones at this point. Right now, they have introduced a SWIFT ban for 7 Russian banks. This is significant for international banking. They have also introduced a ban on transactions with the Russian central bank as well. Again, another significant one for financing in Russia. Very important for the fighting on the ground. They have introduced a 500 million euro support package to finance equipment and supplies to the Ukrainian armed forces. Now, the EU may not be providing any fighting forces on the ground. They're not fighting there, but they are providing financial support to the Ukrainian armed forces. So this is a significant support for Ukraine because they are giving them aid for their armed forces specifically. Regarding airspace, they have put a ban on the overflight of EU airspace and access to EU airports by all Russian carriers. So again, this is important for aviation. Now, to give you a more perspective on how the EU is responding to the Ukrainians fleeing the area, yesterday an important development happened when the EU approved a temporary protective directive plan. This allows Ukrainian nationals and those who have a permanent residency in Ukraine, the protection to the right to live in the European Union for up to 3 years at this moment. So they have this right now. They're fleeing. Many of them are fleeing. They want to reach Europe, and now Europe is providing them with safety. They are going to have the right to live, to work, access to healthcare, education, housing, all of these will be given to them immediately for up to 1 year. And they will not have to go through any asylum procedures. They are just having this permanently for 1 year right now, effective immediately. And if the conflict continues, if the fighting continues and they don't have the safety to go back home, they will have the power to extend this for 2 more years. So in all, they have the right now to go to the European Union and stay there for up to 3 years and have all of these access provided to them freely right now at this point. So this is a major form of security and protection and safety for Ukrainians who are fleeing there. It is estimated that about 1 million refugees have fled Ukraine at this point already. So this is very significant for those million people at this moment. And just to give you an idea of how the civilian population in Europe are also welcoming these Ukrainians at this point. So it's not just the government and the EU that have welcomed Ukrainians, but it's also the civilian population as well. In Germany, we had a picture where at the railway station in Berlin, when trains arriving from Ukraine were there were hundreds of people welcoming them with signs in their hands saying 1 adult, 2 children, 2 children and 2 adults for 2 weeks, telling them for how long they are welcoming them in their homes. So Germans, hundreds of them, showed up telling them, you are welcome in my home. So that's a very strong message of solidarity that they received. There was already a system there for those arriving. They were allowed to be given a free train ticket to anywhere in the European Union. There was a huge operation with food and drinks and medical services available to them arriving from Ukraine to Germany as well. So basically that gives us an idea of how Germans and many in Europe are welcoming Ukrainians at this time.
Thank you, Michal, for this information, especially on this temporary protective directive on the refugees. Well, the situation is pretty worse now. There is expected to have the 1 million refugees will be fleeing to the other European countries. And should we?
So
do you want to say something?
Actually, on her part, thank you for your brief. But first is about the SWIFT. If we go through the detailed statements, like the Gazprom is a major bank for Russia to supply gas to Europe. Germany has already give kind of preferential parts and is not included in this section. And the second part is about the airspace, because we know the intercontinental airspace, most of the time they will go through Russia's airspace. And now we see there are a lot of European countries, they have banned their the flights for Russian airlines. But if Russia retaliated, that will be a huge blow to the international airspace travel, and it's also a very, very important blow to all the airline industries. And we also know Russia is also a major supplier to many many airlines, especially for like Airbus and Boeing for their engines. So that will be a huge disruption to the global airspace and also airline industry. And for the third part is about the refugees are welcomed by the Europeans. But on the other side, we also see, like from German's media like DW and also from BBC, they have reports there are many people from like Africa and from the other developing countries. When they flee from Ukraine, they just got some unequal treatment in many European countries. Some of them cannot cross the border safely, and sometimes they are rejected because of their race, because of their the color, and it's about kind of racism and double standards in this kind of situation. And we can also see in recent days the African Union also issued a statement. They are shocked about this kind of maltreatment for the African peoples there. So I think now is the wartime, and all people should be treated equally, and especially when they are fleeing to these regions. And as for the refugees, and previously we know for the NATO's bombardment in Syria, that has caused unprecedented humanitarian crisis and refugee crisis in European history. And that caused a lot of problems. Even for today, many European countries cannot afford that burden. So we just want to know how European countries can afford another unprecedented humanitarian crisis, especially there are 1 million refugees already. But now we see Ukraine is one of the largest country in Europe who hosts a lot of people. It's over 40 million people. If the war will become a prolonged conflict, so what will happen to these refugees? So
that
is a big problem. And for the other issues, the European solidarity is to supply the ammunition, all the weapons. But now, if we have a lot of these weapons, that means this kind of conflict will become a proxy war, and will become a prolonged war. And since both sides are giving more weapons, that is adding oil to the fire. So I don't think that is good for the peace right now. So maybe we can have more discussion on these issues.
The problem is the question is Europe ready for another wave of the refugee?
Yeah,
the capacity for EU to take Ukrainian refugees are actually very doubtful. Especially with it's only been 9 days. We already have 1 million, so we still don't know.
Currently, it's 1 million. But according to the statistics, there is going to be 2 million and even 4 million, and there is only 44 million people in Ukraine. That is to say, 1 of the 10 people is going to become refugees.
Even for those Germans who are welcoming Ukrainian refugees, for those refugees, they have to reach Germany first, right, without any problem or being held back.
Yes, and but especially for the refugees, we know that almost 1 decade ago, the NATO's intervention in Libya, that caused a lot of humanitarian refugees crisis in the Mediterranean Sea. And now most of the European countries, especially like Italy, Spain, are still suffering from this kind of issue. So how can we say that just nowadays 1 million Ukrainian refugees, now they are welcomed by European countries, but what about the future? That is a big problem. We cannot even handle the issues happened 10 years ago. How can we handle the bigger issue now?
Of course. So maybe the best solution is to stop the war, to stop the conflict, but not to generate more refugees and think about where to put them.
No one wants to be a refugee.
Yeah, no one.
From the refugees' point of view, one side it is going to increase the social security burdens for the European society. Currently, the European economy is on a sluggish recovery. A military conflict and its refugees is going to create a lot of burdens for the EU's economies. At the same time, the refugees find it hard to be a part of the European society. At the same time, I believe 1 million refugees, with the final days of the military conflict, some of the people is going to go back to their homeland, while a proportion of them is going to stay in Europe. So there's going to be an issue for them to be integrated into the society. What kind of occupations and jobs that they are going to take, and the relevant social security is going to be the major problems.
And
for the refugees, it is not the best solutions, because we know the best solution for the refugees is to return to their homeland.
Yeah, I've been told that we have another stringer that will be joining us in the chat room. Hello, Bowden. Hello, Bowden. Can you hear me? Now we have the Bowden Truehook. Hello, Bowden.
He's from.
He's in the city of the Chernivtsi.
Still in Ukraine.
Chernivtsi.
You say in Ukraine.
Can you tell us about the city before we get in? Before we talk to.
Seems like some of the biggest cities in Ukraine are on the east side of the country, very close to Russia, isn't it?
I don't think so.
No. Okay.
So the signal is still not.
Yeah. 信号来了，好像。
Hi, Bertie.
Hello.
Hi, Burden. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Hi, how are
Can
you?
hear me?
Hi, how are you doing? Hi.
Good, thanks.
So I've been told that you're in the city called Chernivtsi. Can you just tell us a little bit about the city that you're in? Where is the city and how the situation right here in your city?
So that's actually my hometown.
Okay.
I have been living in Kyiv for the past 6 months as a student, and now I came back. That's a city in the southwest of the country, and as it is quite far from Russia, it's relatively safe here, even though we have sirens almost every day, and at night we do not experience. We have not yet experienced any attacks from Russian.
Oh, it's a good news.
Що знімати заборонено? Це інтерв'ю. I'm sorry, some man came.
Виключай.
Що виключати?
Яка різниця з тим, там що ти бачив, дивишся новини?
Бачу, що?
Дивишся новини?
Ну, I'm sorry, just some man.
But it seems
There's a soldier
he said-
asked to cut off the signal.
the
And
Poland's
stop
been
the
asked about
interview.
a soldier.
Це іноземні ЗМІ, дивлюся
I
точно.
have no idea if we can continue this.
And I asked him, stop the interview. So we lost him.
So our streamer are asked to
he's here.
not report anymore.
He's here. He's here.
Hi, Bolden. Can we still talk? You still there?
Yes, some man came to me. He says that it's forbidden to be streaming from the outside. Can I continue later?
Yeah,
Okay.
sure.
Sure. Be careful. Be careful.
Yeah, keep safe. Yeah, we'll talk to you later.
Yeah. the
Ken, can you
situation-
just
We understand the situation in Ukraine now is
very sensitive.
The military conflict. So everything happened.
So where is this city? You said he's in,
Chernivtsi 这个是乌克兰西南部的一个城市。
It is a
这个
city
相对来讲呢，
located
目前看
in the
还是有一个
southwest
线
of Ukraine. It is far from the front line of the battle. So it has once again testified that the major target of the Russian troops is on the right hand of the Dnieper River.
So let's talk about battlefields as some of the major cities and major target of this military operation. As of this morning, the conflicts has been mostly taken place in the north and southeast parts of Ukraine. On Thursday, the Russian forces gained complete control of Kherson, a major port city in the south that border Crimea. Gentlemen, you want to share with us something about this Kherson?
对，就是刚才我们就像
Yeah, the Mihail have
对
to
米
talk.
浩已经说过了，是吧？这个
Just
赫
as
松呢是
Michal
俄军
has
目前
mentioned,
控制的这个
Kherson is the only mega city which is being controlled by the Russian troops, and it is also the first troop controlled by Russian units. Back to the topic. Russian troops is not eager to attack some of the mega cities. It is focusing on its military target as
尽管在这个像
eradicate the Ukrainian troops. Although there are some of the battles occurred
这个激烈的交火，
around Kiev and Kharkiv, but the Russian troops is not occupying these cities, and including Odessa. The Russian troops has circled Odessa instead of taking it as a major target. Odessa is one of the major port city to the south of Ukraine, and Kherson is also one of the major strongholds of Russian troops. But the major reason for the Russian army's military operation in Kherson is because of its military meanings. There is the biggest power plant, nuclear power plant, located there. This is going to become a flagboard for the Russian troops, and at the same time, they can control the hydropower station in the Dnieper River once they have opened up the hydro plant stations, and the water is going to rain from that hydro plant to benefit and enriching the Crimea regions. At the same time, in Mariupol, there's going to be a very strong fire across the place of Mariupol.
I think we have the map, but the director can have the place of the map right here.
对，所以我们要是仔细看一下地图呢，就会发现这个
If we
Mariupol 是
read
这个
these maps, you will find Mariupol is one of the major strategy stronghold. It is close to the Donbass region.
在俄军占领赫尔松
After the Russian troops takes over Kherson
是叫
and Melitopol,
那么占领这些地方之后呢，这个马
the city of Mariupol
这个处于
is what we call under besiege. After the Russian troops conquered the Mariupols, it has connected the inland channels between Ukraine and Russia. Russian troops do fight according to its strategies, and in Dobosoko there is a lot of military stronghold. And from the Ukrainian troops, they have 6 bandits with the strong will to fight. Before that, there was around 30,000 people stationed in Mariupol who have been participated in a lot of military conflict in the Donbass region.
Yes, and Azov Battalion has been a major target of the Russian military operation. Gentlemen, can you just share with us something more about this battalion? What exactly is this organization? 这个亚速营是一个什么样的组织？
亚速营呢，实际是这样，这个俄方呢把亚速营
The Russian troops call it what the neo-Nazism. And the Russian government has mentioned about a lot of times about the denazifications because these are the organizations attacking the civilians. President Putin has called them the new era of the fascists, while the Ukrainian government thinks opposite because they think that these organizations fighting for the independence of Ukraine. It is difficult to define this organization. It is an organization with strong will and best equipped military operation skills. The Russian troops used to besiege the Mariupol region while fighting and negotiating with these special organizations, and they have also negotiated with the Donbass region. While the Russian troops trying to tell them to give up their weapons, which was rejected finally. So that's the reason why the Russian troops has besieged the Mariupol region. And they have went through a light war in the eastern regions, and after they have opened up a gate in this area, they are going to make some of the breakthroughs. From the logically speaking, the Russian troops need to cross the Dnieper River. But with such a strong control of these organizations, they have fight back. So that is to say, they are not even paid care of Russian troops. After 8 years of the conquering and strong local stations, this is a troops of the best equipment and strong will to fight. From Russian troops' perspective, the Russian troops also have a very strong will to fight on the background. No matter what is going to happen, they are going to ease out all the military operations and stations in the region.
Military operations is ongoing in the physical world. We also witness another conflicts on the social media platforms. Shui, can you share with us some of your insight on the social media platform? You've been, you have a lot of followers on a Twitter account, right? You see a lot of things on the social media.
Yeah, so on the social media, then we can see there are 3 major trends. The first one is about any Russian voice now has been surprised, and you see a lot of US tech companies like Google, Twitter, the YouTube, and all the other like the Apple. They all suspended their service to Russia, and any Russian voice were surprised and blocked. So that is one major trend, and the other one is quite split because. Now we can see there are kind of misinformation and disinformation campaign on social media. Now we can see a lot of news on the social media, and all the major parties are participating in this kind of campaign. So for this kind of conflict on the social media part, now has changed the format of the modern war. And for the third part, I think now is there are some of the reasons behind this conflict were omitted by the majority, because now many people are talking about what is happening right now and what happening in recent days, but no one is talking about what had happened during the past years or decades, and what is the insightful knowledge, and what about the insightful analysis on this issue, especially for the NATO expansion to this part and the decades of struggles between the Moscow and Brussels, and also between the US and Russia on NATO issue. So that is the trend right now. So it's more complicated on social media. Now it's kind of social media warfare and information war also.
Yeah. So internationally speaking, you can see on the social media, it's nearly just one-sided. Most users, especially from English-speaking countries, are showing their sympathies to Ukraine and the Ukrainian government. But they are calling the Russia's special military operation an invasion, which is a very strong word with emotional feelings.
It's very interesting to see the different parts will use the different words to describe this nature of this military operation.
Exactly.
对，所以我考虑了一下，这个为什么呢？现在这个在国际舆论空间是吧，形成了这样一面倒的趋势。
rhetorics in the international community. There are two reasons. With the sanctions, a lot of international media in Russia has been banned. We understand there are RT, which is being forbidden to spread in the Western world. The second reason is because the channels that we get information has been changed dramatically. Currently, people are using the social media to get the latest update. To speak it firmly, is this social media real media, a true media? A lot of people are using their own cell phone to shoot some of the video clips. Everyone has their own microphone. It is inevitably to create some of the emotions on social media. The reason is quite simple. The social media has emphasized the function of socializing. Emotion is something that you can never avoid. Just as the Chinese netizens mentioned, that there is going to be one-sided rhetoric on the social media. Even if short period of time, the voice is going to become one-sided, and there is going to be back and forth of the voices.
It also reminds us that under the Donald Trump's presidency, Chinese social media app TikTok was under investigation. So there was nearly one time that the Trump administration was going to ban TikTok. Right? It wasn't for business reason. It was a political disagreement against China.
We'll talk about the social media issues later, because that was a very, very important part of this conflict. And now I've been told that our another CGTN reporter, Alelsa Milenkovic, will be joining us soon in Moscow, Russia.
He's from Moscow.
Hello, Alelsa, can you hear me? Alelsa's talking to us in Moscow.
Hi, I'm sorry, I cannot go live with you right now because I am engaged with my TV reporting, and I will get back to you in about half an hour with quite a lot of news regarding situation here in Russia.
Okay, no problem. Talk to you later.
Yeah, a lot of updates.
Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate that.
Thank you.
Sounds very busy.
Maybe we can continue about the social media warfare, because as Mr. Khan has said, they are more emotional. Now we can see on Twitter, on Facebook, and on YouTube, that people are more emotional, and it's more like a one-side story. And especially on this Russia-Ukraine conflict, many people they just want you to choose sides. Either you pro Russia or pro West. So it's very hard. So now it's very emotional, and for the social media's role in the politics, especially in the geopolitical region, geopolitical games. Remember, BBC, they have one documentary in 2012. It's about how Facebook changed the world. It's about how social media has changed the landscape in Middle East, especially during the Arab Spring. So that means they can have some political campaigns, and also to change the local governments and have spread their political information. So that's why now for the Ukraine issue, and also about the Russia-Ukraine conflicts, all major parties are using their own social media platform to give their information to the public and to use a kind of PR campaign and strategy and to give their videos and to be the first one to spread all the information. So it's more like a warfare right now. So compared to previous wars, now it's a totally different information warfare.
不仅如此，实际上我们也应该看到
We
社
should
交
also
媒
see
体
that the
在
social
改变
media
了
has
这个
changed
媒体生态
the
的
ecologies of the media world. It can even change one region and even one country's political structures and its future political destiny. It can also change the way that people accept information. Let me give you one information. President Zelensky appeared on the street at midnight and sending a video clips through social media, encouraging and cheering all Ukrainian people up. This has brought more information to the receptors. There's a lot of emotional shocks inside that video clips. Social media can be used in multiple ways, which is quite benefiting to the spread of information and also the emotional part. It is not only about the fact, it's about the emotion. So this is going to be a double-edged sword. For one side, we can use the social media to achieve what we are going to see. At the same time, we also need to identify which is true or which is not.
Gentlemen, I've been told that we have been reconnected to Jan Hauser.
Oh, okay.
Hello, Jan. Hello. Hello.
Video. I hope it's better now.
Yeah, I can hear you. It's better.
Yes, we were under attack. I'm sorry, and the signal was lost, and there was nothing I can do. I was trying to connect, and there was no signal.
Oh, it's much more better. It's much better than the last time we connected. Yeah, just to give us just tell us more about this the city that you're now. You're in Kiev, right?
Yes, I am. I'm in Kiev. I'm in a central district, downtown historical. So around me there is a lot of historical buildings. A lot of Ukrainian government is actually based here. There are police stations, military installations. So it's sort of maybe even dangerous because the military installations are considered to be targets for the Russian bombardment and rocket attacks, as you've seen in the media.
Okay, great. It's good to hear. It's good to hear that you're safe.
I am safe, and but the attack today in the morning was really a long one. Usually, what happens that's daily. There is around 9 or 10 a.m. we have sirens, and you can hear sirens, for example, far away in different districts, and then when it's nearby, it's your district. And usually, when there is a siren, there is a explosion, maybe in 1 minute or 5 minutes. Sometimes there's no explosion because they shut down the rockets. And today the sirens, they started around 1 hour ago, and mostly in our district I hear them, and it was coming and going for the past hour. And then you were hearing explosions every 2-3 minutes that were quite near me. I would say somewhere in the 1 kilometer diameter, which is something that you are not looking forward to be happening when you try to work on the streets. It's really insensitive killing of people that you don't know that are even there.
Yeah, well, tell us more about it. Can you access to the food, the water, the internet?
The internet mostly stays. They have good connection. The Ukrainian networks are pretty stable. For this live stream, I had to change the SIM cards. I had to switch to another operator. So that's why we are seeing each other now, because the other operator I was using has no signal right now. So maybe something happened to their towers. Right. This is what happens. Like when they attacked, there was a rocket attack on the TV station, and some of the channels stopped streaming. Right. This happens. I would say not every day, but it's common. It's a common occurrence that this is happening. So the other things you were asking about, like if I have access to food and water, yeah, I have. But the problem is that you have to plan in advance. It's not something you just you can just go and get it. Like there are queues in stores, and these stores have particular items that are available that probably nobody else wanted to have, right? And maybe it's not something you're looking for, but you have to queue for it. So there's queues that can go from 1 hour to 3 hours to a shopping store, to a grocery store, and then you have to wait another 1 hour in the line for the cashier. So to pay. I was buying bread actually on Saturday, and there was a line for the bread. Did you hear that? There was a boom right now. So the line on bread on Saturday was around 1 or 1.5 hours, just people waiting. Then the bread arrived, and it was gone in I would say 5 minutes. And if you were looking for, like, for example, you were looking for some meat, that there was no fresh meat, only packaged, and it was mostly fish and rabbit sausages that I even never heard that exist. But so we are now exploring a cuisine that normally I wouldn't really choose. But when everything is inaccessible, you have to do what you do. On Sunday there was a curfew. It started Saturday to Monday morning, and I didn't plan accordingly. I was literally on boiling water, like I boiled water and put minerals like magnesium in it, and that is all I was drinking. And I had pieces of bread made on a pan with salt. That was me and my colleague were eating that. And that's basically our fault because we were not able to score some decent meals this Saturday. But we are here to do reporting and not running around standing in queues for food. So we are now better. We did some shopping, but everything in Kiev is like you have to do it. You have to do it in a plan. Like, for example, right now my colleague is looking for gasoline and LPG, which we are unable to get since Friday, and now that's a week before. And to do the work on the ground, you need gasoline and LPG. So what happens is that he's probably somewhere stuck in a queue to a gas station that will take him maybe even half a day to fill the tank. And this is what happens to all Ukrainians, not just me, right? So the Ukrainians, their daily life is more of a, like, they go to the store, they wait in the lines, and then you can see them that if they have grocery bags coming back and there is a sirens or explosions, you keep them running. You see that keep them running. You see them running and with their precious groceries because they don't want to lose it and they still want to have some supplies at home, right? So it's really heartbreaking, I would say.
Yeah. And so, do you have any plans to evacuate from the Kiev or leaving Kiev? Is there any other corridors or any other ways to leave the city?
No, not anymore. I think that for
so
me,
all of you
the best is to stay.
So all of you need to stay here. Need to stay in Kiev. There's no way to live.
Yes, that's the other thing. Like, even if I wanted to leave, the only option, because I'm also involved with some people who are evacuating, like disabled people from Kiev. So right now, the only option to go out of Kiev is by train. And the train station was sort of hit yesterday, but with a shutdown rocket that was fired at the Ministry of Defense in Kiev. And now there is a lot less people in the train station, so there is a pretty good spot to live. I would say it's now, but I plan to stay maybe a couple of weeks more. It depends on the situation. It's really bad, but there's good reporting. We are doing amazing groundwork, and that is why I came here.
Okay, gentlemen, do you have any question for Jan?
So what about the hospitals?
The hospital,
yeah,
the Madison Hospital,
like
it's still working. It's still operating.
The hospitals, they turned into shelters because usually the newer hospitals, they have like a cellar or foundations that are like yesterday. I was at the maternity hospital of Kiev where the babies are being born. It was a children's hospital, there were children that were born during the war since Thursday, and they were underground. Like, you had to, if you wanted to walk there, you had to watch your head because there were pipes, plumbing. It's the infrastructure inside the hospital. It's not meant for patients. So they moved all the wards. They moved all the wards from the maternity leave and to the underground, and they are doing they are doing the diagnosis, everything for the pregnant woman. Some are staying with their husbands or fathers of the kids there. It's warm and safe. But I was in another hospital, which is the transplantation and surgery clinic in Kiev. It is the Institute for Transplantation of Kiev. So they stopped doing surgeries after the bombing, and they started doing sheltering people because they are in a part of Kiev where there is no metro station, no underground. So for the people who live around the hospital, the course of action was actually to seek shelter in the hospital because this is a new one and has a basement. So the hospitals stopped delivering normal services, which they do during the peacetime, and they are turned into refugee shelters now. There is no ambulances coming to get you. If you get hurt, you're done. It's nothing. The services, the normal services, are not here. I mean, like the ambulances are now used by the military, or I haven't really seen many ambulances. All the ambulances I've seen were usually checkpoints or military bases. But before the war started, you can see ambulance or hear it somewhere, almost every day. And now it's just the rare sight to have ambulance. So the hospitals, they stopped doing services. I suppose if you get hurt and you manage to get to a hospital on your own somehow, they will help you if it's not like a complicated surgery, whatever. Yeah. Because, you have to understand, even when they do the surgeries, and imagine that they are operating and they get hit, right? What happens? What happens to the patients? What happens to the doctors? So they couldn't really risk it. I mean, they want to save lives. I did interview directors of these hospitals. I talked with them, and they said that it's heartbreaking for them because this is what they want to do. They want to treat people. They want to help people, but they cannot do it because they risk. They risk the equipment. They risk their own stuff, and they couldn't really risk that. So they started, putting people in like a shelter. The hospital is now a shelter, and they say this is how we help people now. And I don't think that it's something that they want to do, but it's what they have to do.
So, how do you think, is there any positive result after negotiations between Russia and the Ukraine, and what's your respect?
I don't see there is any positive result of the peace talks because there has been several attempts to de-escalate the situation, but I haven't really seen that on the ground. What I've seen on the ground that is actually escalation, especially during the night. They are starting to do more attacks. They are starting to use a diversity of rockets. So it started like a week ago, right? And it was just one type of rocket that was fired, and now we can hear different kinds of explosions. Now we have some rockets that are just fired into residential buildings. And it's indiscriminate killing, and for no reason.
Okay,
yeah. Right. Thank you, Jan. Thank you. Be safe, and we appreciate you being joining us. And we know that there are 7 other CGTN strainers that's still working for us in Ukraine, including Jan User. They've been working very, very hard, especially when this conflict is ongoing. So thank you again, Jan. Be safe, keep safe, and I'll look forward to talk to you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you so
much.
much.
Have a nice one.
Thank you so much. So our strainers are still working for us. They're trying to connect with us. They talk to us about their story, about what they see in Kiev, in other city in Korea, and also they're producing the stories. So we put those stories on a CGTN website. So you can check them out. You can see what's happening right now in Ukraine. So stay tuned with CGTN's the website, and also our social media platforms of CGTN. Wow. Every time I talk to this person from the war zone,
我想我们应该向我们在前方这个持续工作的这个同事们表示感谢。
I'd like to pay my tribute and gratefulness to those of the streamers who is working at the front line, especially during such special conditions of the military operations. Our colleagues is still bringing us back some of the reports, bringing us the justice, fear, and information in time, which is greatly promoted our understandings of the detailed information. I really want to thank all of my colleagues and pay our respect to them.
We're talking about social media. We want to keep our discussion on social media. So can we say this is the first time in history that we'll witness the conflict in which the social media has played such a major role in this conflict? Can we say that it's the first time? Do we see anything similar before?
It's not the first time, but it's if we go back to the 2003, the Iraqi war, that was the first time when we have this kind of social media join this kind of warfare reporting, and it was from
more
the
about media, but not social. I would say it was
if we go back to the media, that is the Vietnam War in 1970s. That was the first time the war was live streaming on TV station, because at that time in the US, many families they got a new TV set and they can watch what is happening right now. So that time people saw what is happening in the battlefield in the Vietnam, and they see how the brutality, and that led to a lot of internal discussions, especially the civil rights movements. They called to stop the war and withdraw from Vietnam. And later, that has shaped the U.S. policy in the Vietnam. And that is the first time for the media to join the war reporting, the live streaming. But after the 2003 Iraqi war, and the social media become more important in today's today's warfare, and especially during the Arab Spring, we can see the information war now is become kind of national strategy for some countries, especially for the developed ones. And in recent days, for the conflicts in Russia, between Russia and Ukraine, the former U.S. Secretary of State Hillary Clinton already said that during the Arab Spring, the U.S. has already started the cyber warfare and use the social media like the Facebook and the Twitter to overthrow the local governments. And now it's time for the U.S. to call another cyber war against Russia. So you can see now it's not only a kind of social media war; it's already combined with the cyber warfare. So that has changed what the warfare looks like today. And you see the war, they have the physical war like the bombardments in the battlefields. And now we can see another warfare is happening in this social media, and the two wars are shaping each other and affecting each other. So for the social media parts, they have become more important. Even the military operation has some gains in these battlefields, but people in the social media they don't believe that. That may be opposite. So that has shaped our views about the modern war. So
yeah, and Ken, earlier you mentioned about something very interesting finding that the President Zelensky has been very, very good at using the social media to communicate with the outside world.
Yeah.
Well, the President Putin, he rarely uses social media, right?
President Putin barely uses social media. For one part, he is representing his traditional political style. He preferred to use television to broadcast his information. On February the 24th, he broadcasting his speech, telling the public about his special military operation. And by his nature, he don't trust social media. He don't think social media is a part of media. In the traditional perspective of the Russians, social media don't have the features of the traditional medias. It is not what we call serious medias, spreading serious informations. If we want to get some of these serious informations, it belongs to the news broadcasting.
I think first of all is how much credibility we give for social media. Like if you think social media is credible, then you would always go to social media to get news. But for someone such a politician such as President Putin of Russia, maybe he does not trust or he does not believe in the credibility of the news coming from social media, so he prefers traditional or conventional news media. And the other thing I noticed, I think there's a great similarities between President Zelensky of Ukraine comparing to former U.S. President Donald Trump. Because on social media, they are not being regarded as politicians only, but they are being regarded as influencers. Right? So you see a lot of vlogs and fragmented videos by President Zelensky and the daily tweets coming from the White House by the U.S. president, directly telling the world what he's thinking about, what he's going to do next, including the great policy outcomes such as trade war or electoral results. So this is definitely a change. But obviously, such political changes have not influenced older generations of politicians, or more, I would say, like a lifelong career politicians, such as President Joe Biden and President Vladimir Putin.
Yeah, sure. I have seen a lot of the information that has been shared on the social media platform, but I didn't see too much of them to talk about the political reason or historical reasons behind this this military operation.
Yeah,
do you see that as a trend, or do you think it's the information that has been missed out?
Yeah, it's missed out and omitted in the social media. We know for the social media, even for Twitter and Facebook, they have the function is polarization and to gather the people who share the same views.
Yeah.
And that is one trend. And now after the conflict started, and people are blaming Russia and only talk about what happened after this conflict. But the previous warnings, especially like during the 1990s, the father of Americans' engagement to Soviet Union, George Kennan, has warned that the NATO expansion would be one of the fatal failure for the Americans' foreign policies. But later, those decision makers in Washington D.C. continue to expand NATO, and in later years, there are a lot of people, especially for the Washington's elites. They know where is the bottom line for Moscow and where is the right line. For example, in 2008, Williams Burns, he was the U.S. ambassador to Russia, and now it's Biden's CIA director. He already warned Washington's decision maker in his telegram that Ukraine's entry into NATO would be the bottom line, not only for Putin, but also for the entire elites in Moscow. So later in 2014, former U.S. Secretary of State, also the National Security Advisor, Henry Kissinger, also warned Washington's young generation's decision makers that do not let Ukraine to become a war. The Ukraine should be a bridge to link East and West, and should not be a kind of a forefront between the East and the West. But no one listens. So for years, for many think tanks in Washington D.C., they call it ignored warnings. So that is one reason we omit on social media, and not so many people are talking about the historical reasons. We can avoid the current situation, but
所以实际我们来看一下这个乌克兰。
Let's look at what is happening in Ukraine. Ukraine has determined to be a part of NATO, and NATO has frequented its interactions with Ukraine. But actually, there is no usage or effect. Joining NATO needs a long legal procedure with a very strict legal requirement. Apart from irrigate Russian, there's no actual result. That's what is leading to us today.
This later, I think there's a lot of things to talk about, the historical and political reasons behind this this operation. Now we have been joined by Alyssa Milenkovic, the CGTN reporter, my colleagues in Moscow, Russia. Hello, Alyssa.
Hi. I'm sorry, and I apologize for that interruption which I made to your program some half an hour ago. It was just it is frantic here, particularly for reporters. I am in Moscow for over a week, well, almost a week now, waiting for my credentials to be cleared by the Russian Ministry of Foreign Affairs so I can proceed further south to the towns of Rostov-on-Don, and then hopefully towards Ukraine towns of Mariupol, maybe Medyansk, etc., because we would like to be on the ground, to see what is actually happening, because in situations like this, there is a lot of misinformation, and maybe even those misinformations are spreading around the social media networks and through the media, because it is really hard to see that any media, particularly media of those countries involved in this conflict or very much interested in the results of this conflict, that those media are independent, that their reports are quite balanced. This is something I've seen from the first row seats in for the last many years, reporting not just here from Russia, but from many other conflict zones around the world.
Yeah, impartiality is
yeah,
crucial.
Can you just share us more about this the situation in Moscow right now? Because we know this the Western countries have been put a lot of the sanctions on Russia, and the ordinary people has been influenced. Can you share with us about this?
Of course. When the sanctions started, well, actually, when Russia began its, as they call it, special military operation in the region of Donbass, and of course in entire Ukraine, everybody expected that sanctions will be imposed immediately. What would be the scale of that sanctions? Nobody knew. Well, maybe the leadership of Russia knew, but ordinary people don't know. The immediate effect was on the air travel. That was the first effect. These days, not a single European airline, or let me correct myself, Western European airline is flying to Russia. There is only one country that keeps its flights to Russia, and that's Serbia. From yesterday, they increased, they doubled the number of their flights from Belgrade to Moscow, and I think they're keeping also their flight from Belgrade to St. Petersburg. So from I think 2 or 3 daily flights, they doubled that number because it is so many people interested to either get back to Russia or to leave Russia. Of course, there are 2 other transportation hubs which Russians can use, or which anybody can use to reach Moscow. One is through Istanbul and one is through Dubai. So that was the first effect. Then the ruble started sinking. Ruble started losing its value, and the shopping frenzy started around Moscow, and not just around Moscow, I think throughout Russia, because people are pretty much aware that the Western goods will not be available anytime soon in any large quantities around Russia. So they run to the shops to try to buy as much as possible goods from iPhones and laptops, well, Western laptops like MacBooks, etc., to even ordinary clothes, to perfumes, to things like IKEA furniture, because IKEA also announced that they will most likely very soon they will close their operation here in Russia. So that's the first effect. But some things cannot be ignored. Russia is one of the largest producers of hydrocarbons, meaning natural gas and oil. So Russia will have no issues of supplying all these energy sources to its population. Then Russia is also one of the largest producer of food in the world, one of the largest exporter of wheat in the world. And Russia also will be quite safe regarding food. So basic necessities are not something that Russia is worried about. But for instance, the EU and US are banning selling of Airbus and Boeing aircraft to Russia. And of course, they ask return of around 800 planes which are leased here to Russia. They're returning to the West. There is a time frame of around 30 days for Russian air carriers to do that. But Russian legislature is most likely about to impose a nationalization of those aircrafts, so they will stay most likely in Russia. How will they operate in the days, weeks, and years to come? That's a big question. But in the same time, let's not forget that Russia solely works on a short, how they call it, narrow body aircraft MS-21, which is already certified. And of course, Russia jointly with China works on long-haul wide-body aircraft called CR-929. And combining those two, Russia might overcome that issue of lacking aircraft for internal transfer. And well, in the long term, those sanctions will definitely bite Russia. But for even longer, they also might bite West a lot, particularly the Western Europe. But let's focus on that a little bit later.
Yeah. And Russia and Ukraine has reached a deal this morning about in their second round of peace talk about a humanitarian corridor and humanitarian aid. How Russia reacts to this news?
Information about that are quite, how should I put it, not so clear. Yes, that is correct. The agreement was reached in Belarus during the negotiations between the two sides. That's undisputed fact. But how it's going to be implemented on the ground, it's a big question. Yeah. I'm based in Moscow, in Russia, so I'm monitoring all the time the Russian media. They are my predominant source of information about Russia, and I am presenting mostly the Russian position about everything. And Russian news outlets are saying that, for instance, the towns of Mariupol, towns of Volnovakha and Kharkov, all of them in the eastern Ukraine, are currently, I would use medieval word, under siege by the Russian forces and the forces of Donetsk People's Republic. That's self-declared territory of Ukraine. So according to them, they opened humanitarian corridors for people from there to go so they can leave those cities. But for instance, the report I watched this morning is that nobody's leaving town of Mariupol, which is town of 400,000 people, regardless of the fact that, according to Russian sources, that humanitarian corridor is open. Russian reasoning, Russian explanation why is that happening is that inside that circle, inside that town, there is a number, according to them, a lot of foreign mercenaries, predominantly from Poland and from Croatia, and that they are preventing population trying to leave Mariupol. And Mariupol doesn't have any water at this moment, doesn't have any electricity, doesn't have any food supplies. And if that's the case, if that's true, what the Russian media are saying, that those nationalists and of course the foreign mercenaries are in Mariupol and preventing people leaving Mariupol, it means that agreement between Russia and Ukraine about opening humanitarian corridors is hardly going to be fulfilled.
My last question to you, because we have an IAEA press conference in about 4 minutes. How people in Russia reacts to this conflict, and what do they say about the NATO's role in this conflict?
It is hard to say that I've seen or I've spoken, particularly in the beginning of this conflict, with any of the Russians here, any of the locals here.
Yeah.
Hello?
Oh.
The signal lost.
Is that Alelsha?
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So
go ahead.
Let me go back. I haven't heard almost anybody that they are immediately supporting military action in Ukraine. It was quite a shock for Russians as well. But after time passes, after several days, I spoke with the same people, and almost everybody are saying, look, we as a country were cornered by NATO, and we had to defend ourselves. So this military intervention, military action, special military operation, aggression, call it whatever you like, most of the Russians do see as a necessity, as a fight for survival of the country. And that's something that the head of the Russian Foreign Intelligence Service yesterday, Sergei Narishkin, emphasized, saying that, for instance, they've found evidences of UK forces in the middle of that they constructed. They have built 2 naval bases, one in Ukraine, one in the Sea of Azov, at the shores of Sea of Azov in Ukraine, another at the Black Sea, also in Ukraine. He also said that they've seen a lot of military activity at the airports in Ukraine where Ukrainian airports were prepared for receiving a large number of NATO aircraft. So according to him, this is a matter of life or death for Russia. Russia needs to have that kind of buffer zone, meaning Ukraine and Russia don't want to see any NATO forces there.
Is Daniel with us? Thank you, Elisa. Thank you, Elisa. Appreciate your joining us with us today, and keep safe. And I hope to talk to you soon. Thank you so much.
Yeah, a lot of foreign mercenaries right now. So will that lead to?
And I've been told that our another CGTN strainer, Daniel Hawkins, will be joining us soon. And he's still in. He's also in Moscow. Daniel, can you hear me?
Hi, yes, I can hear you.
Hi, Daniel. It's very good to talk to you. Yeah, we know that you're in downtown Moscow, and can you tell us that there are any changes in life in Moscow compared to the time before this conflict?
Well, if you were to arrive tourist in Moscow at this stage, on the surface of things, it would be business as usual. Dig a little deeper, and things are very much different here for people that are living in the city. As you go about the streets, the cafes, as you visit offices, people are very much really glued to their phones, exchanging messages, exchanging latest updates on what's going on. Really, people have been very much in a state of shock and disbelief. I think it's fair to say that this war is only a week in. For many people in Moscow, it seems like a month already. I'm sure you've seen the images coming out of the city just yesterday of people rushing into IKEA, the furniture store of the Swedish company announced it was ceasing operations in Russia for the time being. That resulted, for example, in police having to be called in to stop that disturbance. In the days as the ruble collapsed, many software, hardware stores took prices off their merchandise, saying, please increase prices, because people just didn't know how bad things were going to get. And the news updates very much are coming in, not even daily, but hourly. Just today, dozens of flights were cancelled in the three major Moscow city airports, mainly to the southern part of Russia, but also, of course, abroad because of flight space. As a result, ticket prices have gone up. People very much don't know what to expect next in terms of even finances or crypto trading. People don't know whether to withdraw money or deposit money because of the increased rates in terms of deposits. People are trying to share messages and suggestions and tips on social media, in messaging apps, but the fact is nobody knows when this will end or really how bad things are going to get, and that is a very large concern for Russians here.
Yeah, can you tell us how has the sanctions affected people's life in Russia? Because earlier we just talked to our CGTN reporter. There's a lot of sanctions from the Western world on Russia. Do you feel any of this influence that has been brought by those sanctions in your daily life?
But modern Russia isn't a stranger to crises or sanctions, and really over the last 7 years, the attitude of many Russians has been one of taking these sanctions with a pinch of salt, with some optimism, even with some bravado. The common catchphrase on the street was "Prorvemся," which in Russian means "we're going to make it, it's going to be okay." They treated with a pinch of irony the fact that certain Western products, certain Western food, for example, was taken off the shelves in supermarkets. It became a subject of jokes, of anecdotes. So the sectoral sanctions that have been imposed in Russia over the last 7 years perhaps haven't had the impact on day-to-day life and the people that many feared. What's going on today, though, is very much different, very much unprecedented. Indeed, the Russian oligarch Airbus said just yesterday that Russia, as a result of what's happening now, faces a crisis 3 times worse than the 1998 Russian financial collapse, of course, etched in the memory of Russians as a total disaster and total catastrophe. And what's happening now is very different to the targeted sectoral sanctions that Russia faced before, which perhaps didn't have so much of an impact on the day-to-day life as these sanctions will have in the coming days and weeks.
So what is the Russian people, your friends, your families, the people around you, what's their take on this conflict that has happened between Ukraine and Russia?
Russia and Ukraine share a very close history, political, economic, cultural, of course, as well, going back centuries. And that is something that the Russian government has tried to feed in on when trying to justify this invasion of Ukraine, that we're rescuing a brotherly nation, we're saving Ukrainians from the clutches of Western imperialism, the clutches of NATO, bringing them home, so to speak. I think it's very important to differentiate between the relations of Russia and Ukraine as states on a governmental level, and Russians and Ukrainians as people. Despite what's gone on in the country over the last 7 years between Russia and Ukraine, ordinary Russians and Ukrainians have still viewed each other very close to a brotherly level. Relations have been fraught, but okay. After what's happened recently, that is going to take generations to rebuild, if it will ever be rebuilt at all. The perception, certainly among state media in Russia, is that the Ukrainians, as I say, are victim of a chess game. They're pawns in a chess game by the West and by NATO, and they need sympathy, they need rescuing. That's something, of course, Ukrainians will not agree with. They're fiercely proud and independent nation, a proud and independent people. As I say, on the ground between ordinary people, despite the tension, up until now, relations have been more or less warm. What is happening as we speak, though, of course, tragically, meaning that will be destroyed for generations to come.
Thank you so much, Daniel Hawkins. That's Daniel Hawkins, who has been live with us in Moscow. And Daniel is also a CGTN strainer and is a former RT news anchor. Thank you so much for being with us today. I hope to talk to you soon. Thank you, Daniel.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think it's necessary to talk to the people from
Yeah.
both sides, in Ukraine,
both
in Moscow, and also from other European countries, so we can puzzle them up and we'll put those puzzles together and have a clearer view on this conflict. So, and also I've been told that our CGTN strainer Bohdan Tryhawk, who's a Ukrainian student who worked for CGTN as a strainer. He has been interrupted by the military person who has been by the soldier on the street because he has been asked to not do the live cross on the street. But now he has been going back home and he's now safe.
Okay.
Thank you so much again for all of the strainers who are working for the CGTN. And also, once again, I want to share with you, we have a 7 CGTN strainer who's been working for us during this conflict in Ukraine, a different part of this part of the Ukraine, and also producing a story every day. We put those stories on our website, so check them out, that you will have a unique perspective on this conflict. Thanks so much. So let's get back to our conversation on this, the political reasons and historical reasons behind this military operation.
对，实际上我们能够讲很多
Actually,
关
we
于
can tell a lot
俄
of
乌的
stories
冲突
about the
的一些
historic reasons between the Russia-Ukraine
这里
conflict.
边我想举一个
I'd like to give
有
you
一个
one
地方
example to
可以
further
看
explain
到
the Russia-Ukraine
很多
conflict and to see the true
很多
nature
层次
of such a conflict.
在
3 years ago,
这个俄罗斯有一家叫列瓦达这个民意调查中心
there is a Russian survey center which is the largest, one of the largest Russian survey center, which is called Levada.
那么列瓦达中心呢
The Levada Center
列瓦达 Center 做了一个民调
has made a
这个它呢
surveys across the country for over 100 cities.
找了1500
They are finding 1,500 people randomly, asking them their attitude towards NATO.
显示呢 大约是有
And the final result demonstrate around 68% of the people noted that NATO is posing a threat to Russia. While the same question was asked in Poland, do you think that Russia is a threat to Poland? Over 70% of the people thinks Russia is the biggest threat of Poland. So that is to say, no matter in Russian or the Eastern European countries, members of the NATO's, like Poland, they have a deeply rooted hostile attitude toward each other. In terms of the social opinions, they are thinking that the other party is their ancient enemies. definitely we can tell a lot of historic reasons. For example, the NATO's expansion eastward, while the people's attitude also play a very important role.
Opinion, like we talk about historical reasons, we can go back to hundreds of years ago, and we see from the West Europe and Russia there are a lot of wars, and even there are a lot of wars happening around what's happened around the Black Sea, the Crimea, and also the Eastern Europe parts. It's between the West and Russia. So today's public opinion was originated and inherited from the old generation. So we can understand the historical reasons. So that's why Russia is very, very sensitive for NATO to push its borders again and again and again. And they thought they were fooled by the NATO because NATO has promised them not to expand and will keep the line of 1997. So Moscow thought it's a provocative action. So it's time for them to react.
另外，我认为呢，也要这个深刻的理解，从俄罗斯人的角度来看，是吧？他们是如何看待乌克兰的？这个呢，我认为也是一个非常重要的一个情感因素，因为历史的原因，是吧？这个俄罗斯和乌克兰呢，这个实际上呢，原来在一起共同生活了将近6个世纪，对吧？自从13世纪，是吧？这个两个国家其实当时还没有这个明确的这个俄罗斯和这个乌克兰的这个民族国家，但是还没有。
barely merged, and there was no single definition of the place of Russia and Ukraine. After the two places become one country, until the era of the USSR, the two places are together for the past 6 centuries, and they cannot separate each other. They share the same identity and cultural background. Even after the collapse of the USSR, a lot of people in Russia don't treat the Ukrainian people as foreigners because it's very different from the traditional European concept. Russian people don't treat European people as the foreigners. They think the Ukrainian people as a part of themselves. So when the Ukrainian government has adopted a long-term pro-West attitude, it makes the Russian people unacceptable in terms of their emotions. So that is what leads to today's situation. So it is a pity and regret from the history. President Putin, during his public broadcasting in the 24th of February, a lot of Russian people think that they belong to the same ethnic groups with the Ukrainian people. So from the emotional perspective, it is very important to understand Russian people.
Russian-speaking population living in Ukraine, which is
this is also important factors, especially in the eastern part of Ukraine.
Those comments that we collected from the Facebook, and one said the Russia sends Ukraine tons of food and other daily necessities, while Western countries are sending tons of weapons. It is clear that Western countries like war and prefer to wage war. Well, there's with just one comment that has been left by the comments by the internet users. So what do you think of those the comments? Well, that conflict's been. Are we witnesses the conflict's been turning into some sort of the proxy war?
Clearly, the U.S. and NATO wants to use Ukraine as a fortress against Russia. So I would say that de-weaponize Ukraine for NATO or the U.S. would be very, very difficult to accept.
Yeah, Shuve, you mentioned about a proxy war. We talked about proxy war things. What's your opinion on this?
Now we have a lot of foreign mercenaries and also a lot of more weapons coming to Ukraine. So if the long become a prolonged one, so we have the danger to become a proxy war. And you see, for previous years, the political structure and the political struggle in Kiev, one president come, one president go. If we go to the detailed insights, there are the shadow of the big powers from U.S. and from Russia. And you can see for the 2014, the U.S. has also sponsored the anti-government campaign, and we can see a lot of open data and open materials to support that one. So and now there are more parties involved, and especially the foreign mercenaries, and they are not protected by international law, and they are against the law, and most of the mercenaries, they have committed a lot of war crimes in the previous conflicts. So if we have a lot of foreign mercenaries now, so we don't know where the conflicts will go, and how the rights of civilians can be protected, and if they attack Russia, how will Russia respond? Because we see from their Moscow's statements, those foreign mercenaries will not be protected as the war prisoners or the POWs. So let's see what happens. We're really worrying about the situation will be escalated a lot, and the situation may be may worsen in the coming days.
对，这也是为什么
Yes, that's the reason why the Chinese Chinese government has calling for the two parties to stay calm and avoid escalations of the conflict. It is because all the stakeholders, so please do not provoke a further escalation of the situation. Definitely, we can play some of the constructive rules in such a conflict. China has always advocating that the two parties should involve negotiations and diplomatic ways to address the Russian-Ukraine conflict instead of the escalations of the conflict. We have understand that the 5 rounds of the NATO's expansion eastward do pose the threat to Russia and provokes Russia's anger. The Russians' opinion should be considered.
We don't want any further escalation of this conflict. But, gentlemen, what do you think? Under what circumstances will this conflict come to an end? Or, in other ways, what do they really want, including all parties that has been involved in this conflict, including Russia, Ukraine, Europe, and even the U.S.? What do they want to?
Maybe Mr. Kang can share us from Moscow's perspective.
It is a very grand question that involves the participation of many parties. To put it simply speaking, let's talk about Russia first. If we are thinking that we are on a table playing cards, Russia has stated it quite clear that Ukraine should acknowledge the independence of the two countries of the Donetsk and the Donbass, and Ukraine should denazification, and Ukraine should undergo the process of denazifications and demilitarizations. These are the major pursuits of the Russian side, while from the Ukrainian side, its pursuits, its purpose is very clear. They are asking for a comprehensive withdrawal of Russian armies, including from the Crimea regions and Donbass regions. There is a huge gap between the two parties. My personal understanding on Europe is to end this military conflict as quickly as possible. Definitely, there is also an interruption between the EU-Russian relations. We understand the EU has a lot of economic and trade ties with Russia, and people-to-people exchanges and cooperations in the energy sectors. Energy is one of the most important topics between the Russian and European collaborations. 55% of the Europeans' energy supply is coming from Russia. We have always talked about that 55% is natural gas and 45% is oil. Countries in Europe even have as extreme as 75% reliance on the energy supplied by Russia. During the transitional period into the new energies, the traditional energy, the conventional energy, has a irreplaceable positions. After the interruptions of the Russian-European supplies, the European countries can definitely consider to import the energies from the US, but the price is too high for the European countries to take for the long term, and currently the natural gas price in Europe has rocketed. Especially, it is influencing the Nord Stream 2 project. The project has been frozen, and to my knowledge, the Russian government did not truly hope the Nord Stream project would be suspended.
Ban the Gazprom bank, a major bank, to deal with the West Europe for the gas exports. So we can see
they also have a plan B or even plan C.
Charlie, what do you think about this? The target of what's the major goal of European countries and U.S.?
I think the U.S. and Europe and EU nations are going to be divided by this conflict. Clearly, for right now, they're all condemning Russia's military operation in Ukraine. But in the long run, especially when it takes longer to end this conflict, it is the European nations, they are dealing with the refugees, they are dealing with the aftermath, they are dealing with the rising prices of gas and oil. But for the U.S. government, it's just much easier. They can just send weapons and send the cash to Ukrainian government to keep fighting with Russia, but they don't have to send troops to fight on the ground, at least not officially. So
let me add up some of the information, especially on the U.S. attitude. The U.S. has a very contradictory attitude. For one part, it provided plenty of the military supplies to Ukraine through the NATO channels. For another side, the U.S. government has clearly noted that it is not going to dispatch any military support to Ukraine. To put it simply, the U.S. would not wish a direct confrontation with the Russian troops. This is a contradictory attitude from the U.S. side. So since you don't want to have a direct confrontation with the Russian, why do you push the Ukrainians on such a direct confrontation?
U.S. approaches to Ukraine before the conflict started, they have the different approaches to how to deal with Russia, and the European Union want to have kind of a peace agreement and to push all the parties to ink a peace agreement. But now, after the conflict, and especially some people is we know who is inciting the conflicts. Who is inciting war? So now the U.S. has successfully reunified its allies with Europe, and now we can see now they are in the same front line. So the geopolitical situation in Europe is dynamically reshaped.
And we talked that topic also in the morning about the pace of their military operation, because there is the rhetoric on the social media that it's been 9 days since the President Putin has announced this military operation, so over the week, and now the people on the social media are saying this is, okay, the pace has been not noticeably slowing down. What's your opinion on this?
Actually, I think on the social media, so many voices spread is what I think is quite suspicious information. We can check where did this information comes from other perspective. There were so many informations, including the military operations about the Russian troops, why it has launched a lightning war, or why the Russian armies feels to conduct a quick military operations. I think this prerequisite and hypothesis is not standing by itself, because the Russian troops has been acting on its plans, as President Putin has told President Macron during the phone call. The special military operation from Russia in Ukraine means the Russia needs to finish its military target. For the slowing down of such a military operation, and topics like it do not stand, because the Russian troops has gradually pushed forward according to their previous plans. And if we do observe it from the military operation perspective, it is not a very slow movement.
But there's another trend, right after the conflict started, many reporters in the U.S. asked President Biden, has Biden underestimated Putin? There's no answer right now, but now we can see there's a lot of reactions from the West, either sanctions or there's a lot of condemnations and something like that. So has Russia underestimated the reaction from the West?
实际上我觉得俄罗斯的反应很淡定，是吧？对，因为这个制裁实际上已经持续了7年，是吧？他现在基本感觉不出来这个制裁对他有什么影响。
Russia barely feels the impact of such sanctions. Russia's economy, because of its industrial structures, is sufficient to support itself instead of depending on the Western world. The Russia's economy is relying on the raw material export and energy, oil and gas export. This kind of sanction is not going to play an impact on the Russian's economy. With the Russian-European conflict carries on, some of the sanctions might not. I still think some of the sanctions really goes to some of the entertainment. The sanctions on cat is becoming such a fun news.
Sorts of a media strategy to put pressures on Russia.
对，那包括制裁是吧？如果是我们正常理解，
Our normal understanding about sanctions is about the sanctions on the economies, sanctions on the financial systems. But the sanctions on the Russian cat is really funny. It is to some kind of the entertainment, and the sanctions on the Russian trees. Most of the netizens might not be very clear that in Europe there is an annual competitions for the trees. And Russia is selecting one tree from which was planted, one oak tree planted by Dunganev 50 years ago. And because of this Russian-Ukraine conflict, the European Committee even banned Russian tree to participate for such a competition. This is not a very serious topic.
Yeah, we will still have these comments from our Facebook page, and who also mentioned about sanctions. And it said, I think people is pretty calm. It says other people should stay neutral because we're not staying both sides. We're not in their boots. Let UN enter the field with the equality both sides. Evacuated all civilians since there's no other countries' volunteers troops are joining. Yeah, we mentioned about that. Other volunteer troops are joining in this conflict. Every war conflict only sacrifices innocent civilian lives who trying to protect the land they are born. Every life being someone treasure.
Yeah.
Good point. Sanctions only makes other countries slowly facing consequences. As also mentioned about the sanctions, there's different ways of the sanctions, including, well, like you say, the trees, the cat has been involved in the sanctions, the airplane, the airlines, and also entertainment. Right, industry, entertainment,
entertainment, and sports.
For decades, we have seen a lot of sanctions, but not so many sanctions has led to a real peace. So the top priority is to have the situation calm down and to give peace a chance, but not just sanctions again and again. For years, the Russia has suffered a lot of sanctions, but now.
Yes, of course.
From another side, this round of the sanctions is quite different with the previous sanctions. It is a sanction of large scales, covering a lot of areas, including the sanctions in the big data centers. The top 3 big data companies, including Oracle, has suspended its operation in Russia, and also the world's top-level vehicle manufacturers has also suspended their operations in Russia. It is very severe. And we have also understood some of the sanctions in Russia. The Russian spokesperson has been banned from competition.
And DPRK definitely is different from sanctioning Russia, which used to be a superpower.
Yep. Before we go, I'd like to share with you some of this the conflict losses that has been announced by Russian and Ukrainian side. As of this hour, the Russian troops have reported nearly 500 killed in actions, with nearly 1,600 injured. The number contrasts with the 6,000 deaths claimed by Ukrainian President Zelensky earlier this week. On the Ukrainian side, the clashes have killed over 2,800 and within about 3,700, while nearly 600 have been captured by Russian forces. I think the casualty will still increasing as this conflict is ongoing.
Families are suffering.
That's right. That's all for this time we have for today's chat room. We will closely watch this space for however long the things will may last. But I think every one of us, we all of us are certainly hope for a peaceful resolution will be coming soon.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for dropping by our chat room, presented to you by China Global Television Network. I'm Yang Zhao. Bye for now.